So today we're going to look at John Hersey. John Hersey started out as a foreign correspondent for Time and Life magazines. He was a correspondent in Italy, Asia, and then parts of Russia as well. He wrote for The New Yorker, and his topics range from war, politics, social injustice. A lot of his topics were really hard topics to write about that people knew about, but he took a different perspective on them and focused on different things. He also created what was called new journalism. And so he took nonfiction writing and used fiction and storytelling techniques to make it more like a story than just reporting the facts of this nonfiction piece he was writing. Hiroshima is a great example of new journalism. It's his most popular work. And so it's definitely a great example of new journalism. Hiroshima, like I said, it reads like fiction, but it's plain and simple. He simply reported what he saw. He kind of took a step back, kept himself out of the writing, and just wrote what he saw. It shifts from person to person really well. So one minute, you're focused on the pastors, and the next minute you're focused on the doctors who are so overworked, and then the next minute you're focused on this mom and her little boys. And so it shifts from person to person really well, giving enough character development, but also giving all of these different perspectives on this horrible event and how it affected different people. Something about his writing style that was really awesome was that he gave graphic details. And so one of the quotes I pulled was, "He reached down and took a woman by the hands, but her skin slipped off in huge glove like pieces." That's graphic. You can imagine that in your mind perfectly. And you can also just see um, how the bombing, how it affected people and how awful and damaging it was. And that's one sentence. It's not anything big or fancy, but it lets you see how awful this bombing was. He also incorporates a lot of humanity into his pieces. And so a quote that I have is, "They were delighted when one of the city's gas storage tanks went up in a tremendous burst of flames." And he's talking about some little boys here, which I think is just, it's so real. Like, little boys are going to be excited about gas storage tanks going up in flames. In the midst of this awful event, there's still these little boys, and there's still people out there who who have these little joys that they can find. And so he really puts humanity into his pieces. So the next things that we're going to look at are some of his additional works. And so Why Do the Students Bog Down on First R is a piece about an educational committee who are looking at how they can help students read better, and like how they can help teachers and support teachers, and how they can make sure students aren't getting left behind. This piece was more informational, but what I liked about it was that he asked a lot of questions to the reader that really made you think and have to think about things in a deeper way. And so a quote that I have is, "Should not schools reapply themselves to the problem of how children can learn the troublesome fundamentals early enough and well enough to become well-rounded readers, readers, that is, who not only understand and remember what they read, but also are discriminating and skeptical about it? Otherwise, may we not stand in danger of producing the whole but empty child?" And then the next piece that we're going to look at is the Algiers motel incident. And this is about an incident in Detroit where there were some people in a hotel room. They ended up having the police called. The police came and ended up beating these people senselessly. And three of them actually were killed. The movie Detroit is actually based on this. And what I like in this piece is that Hersey comes out and says at the beginning, "Normally, I don't get involved in my journalism. I take myself out of it. But in this piece, I'm going to be in it. I'm going to be kind of like narrating it and helping make sure that there's no confusion and that everything is really clear." And so I thought that was kind of cool. And also in this piece, it's another piece that's told like storytelling. He interviews so many different people and talks to so many different people. And so he really has a bunch of different characters. And it's really, again, about the people in the story. A quote that I like is, "It is by now on Monday, July 31st, that the killings of the Algiers were not executions or snipers, looters or arsonists caught red-handed in felonious crimes in the heat of a riot, but rather they were murders embellished by racist abuse." Um, and so I feel like that gives you a clear picture of what's going on in this story. And it kind of puts it point blank that this was a murder and it was a racial murder. And so this piece is really awesome. Reminds me a little bit of Hiroshima, and that it is storytelling, but Hersey is actually in it and narrating it. So just some analysis. I know I talked about how details are awesome in Hersey's work, but there are some times when his details were way too overwhelming and were too much of a diversion away from the story. And so the details work sometimes, but there are just sometimes when I felt like his writing would have been better if there were less details. And what can we learn from it? Hersey defied the norms. He told a story, and so that's what we can do is just defy the norms, tell stories, take yourself out of the article and focus on the people. The people are the ones that are going to tell the best story, and so focus on them. And then develop observational skills. Hersey, he observed people, and that's why his writing was so good. So if we can take some of these things and apply them to our writing, we can have awesome writing like John Hersey, where people remember it and where it gives a new perspective on events that might already be known.